want to look at some introductory Kotlin code made in Android Studio with a view activity with a view. So I'm not using compose, at least not yet. Okay, so I started with some pre-existing code that can be found at this location, and it has a Kotlin code, MainActivity.kt, and it should have also an activity_main.xml. So the XML is the layout, and the Kotlin is the sort of the coding, the activity, the actions that are going to be done. Okay. I had started a new project. I've already done this, so I don't have to do grading build, but I chose an empty views activity. This is the start where you have an XML that you are creating, and it will normal is these days is a constraint layout is by the default. And then I took the two files that were in that zip. I took the XML and I copied that over the activity_main. So I copied what I had to over this. And then for the main activity, I copied the main activity all except the package. So I copied everything from 3 down and pasted over everything from 3 down. So I kept this package here says greetings, and this package here says hey there. So they are not. So I didn't want to accidentally overwrite the package, which would disrupt everything. Okay, so that's how I got where I am and let all the Gradles build and sync and what have you. Okay, so now here is the app. I chose a virtual device. I only have the one virtual device, so it was an easy choice. And I am running, and here it is on this right now. It is docked. It's in the sort of Android Studio window, but now I'm going to make it sort of its own separate window. And there it is, and increase it, maybe not that much, but make this window a bit bigger first. Okay, and then I have a place for the user to enter a name, and then there are buttons to greet them in various languages. So there is the name Fred, and German, French, English, Spanish. Okay, if I change the name Fred, it is clearing out the messages and returning the buttons to they're gray. But if as I click on the buttons, they change colors and display the messages. They also become unclickable, and until if I change this, then they become clickable once again. Okay, so that's what we're making. Let me dock it back. Okay, so that's what we have. Let's look at the activity name. So we had a text view that we are prompting the user for their name. If I were better, I would have a label for and label this as the label for the edit text. But this is that label that says enter your name. Then we have, and it is constrained. We're working with a constraint layout. It's constrained to the parent. So this is the first thing down, and it's constrained parent. The next thing down is the edit text for entering the name, and it's constrained to the parent, to the container, and its start is at the end of the text view that we just talked about. Under that, the next thing down is a button that says English, and it is constrained. The start, the left is to the parent, and the bottom is constrained to the edit text above. And then the text view is to display the message in English. So I called it TV English, text view English, and it starts off with just a bunch of dashes, and it was constrained to its button, the button to its left, and the edit text above. and so on down the line. Button, text view, button, text view, button, text view. Everybody has at least one horizontal constraint, one vertical constraint. Otherwise, if things are unconstrained, they would all sort of be lying on top of one of each other, and that's sort of the upper left-hand corner. So that is the activity main. Again, we're not using compose yet, so this is this pre-existing interface. And now we're going to go over to the main activity. Okay, so there are a bunch of collapsed imports here. So the various things, I was playing around with changing the color of the button. So there is a color thing imported. The normal app compact activity that is you can edit this text and things happen while you edit the text. So that is this editable text watcher. So that I can edit. I have an edit text. I have events for when you are editing it, and I have something to watch for it. So that's all this thing. Anything that's visible is a view. So you start off with a basic view, and then you can have more specific features, like the features of a button. So we bring in button, we bring in edit text, we bring in text view. So TextView is what either is going to display a permanent message, or you can change the message in code, but not the user, but the edit text is for the user to do work with, and a button is, of course, to click on. Okay. So it gave me by default the main activity. It gave me the override fun on create. It gave me the super on create. It gave me the set content view. All that came automatically when I started this particular kind of app. And now what did I add? I'm declaring a variable for the username. So when the person enters the name, I want a place to put it. And I've made a variable for that I called username. So I'm starting off with var, and I give it a name and I give it a type. Okay. Next thing I have is a val ET name. And so let's first talk about the difference between var and val. So var is that you're allowing something to vary, to change. And so the username will change. I entered Fred, then I entered Ginger, then I entered Ginge. And so var is allowing that to change, whereas val is more like in other languages, final, that it can't change. But so what is in, so the next thing, so 21 was the username and is variable, but 22 is I'm making the connection between a code version of my edit text and the interface edit text that was over in the XML. And while the contents of the edit text can be changed by the user, this association is not going to change. Once I make the connection between my code version of the edit text and the edit text in the XML, I'm not going to change it. Hence, that is the val. And so it is find view by ID. So I'm going, the view is some visible widget. So in this case, I'm looking for, I specify an edit text, and then R.id.et name, the edit text over here, that was near the top, the edit text had an ID of et name. ET for edit text, name for what's going in it, and names going in it. So here is the list of IDs. I am finding a view with that ID and casting it sort of as an edit text, announcing that it's an edit text, and giving it sort of a name over here in code. I tend to name the variable the same as I named the ID. That's not necessary. That's just a convention I tend to follow. It helps me remember what the thing is. Okay. So, and when we first, if you first type this line, it's going to, the edit text is going to be sort of red or maybe squiggly, or maybe this will be red and the whole class over here will be all squiggly red lines. And then if you put your cursor over that and hit Alt Enter, then it will import the appropriate thing, which was this edit text here. Okay, here are more connections to the interface for all the text views. So this was the edit text here. Then each message, English, French, German, and Spanish, had the corresponding text view. And this is the connection between code here in Kotlin and the interface. And here is the same, but for the buttons. And I usually just use a prefix to remind myself what type of thing it is. This is a TV, a text view, and I often make the ID and the name, the variable name, the same, but these are just conventions. That does not have to be. Okay, so the first thing now I want to do is to have what happens when the buttons are clicked. Okay, and I'm not going to try to do anything fancy and have all the buttons handled by a single function. The reason I'm having something with multiple buttons as sort of my first example is just that there are variations on the theme of how to do this. So I wanted they're actually, I'm going to show 3 ways. So the last 2, I think German and Spanish, will be sort of just the same way, just changing the word German to Spanish. But the English and the French will just be different ways of handling this problem. Let me make a little bit more space here. Okay, so with the button English, I said button English dot set on click listener. And again, up here, when I first say button, it's going to say, I don't know what you mean, and then we need to import. And then up here, the same thing for text view. We're going to have to import as we did for edit text above. And then when you say button click dot set on click listener, again, you want it to provide as much code for you as possible, but there are limits on here because there are different ways of writing this code. But we are making a listener for clicks, so a button can have a click, and then this method, the set on click method, will take as its argument an object, and it is the view itself, the button. It's so the object will be the view, which will be the button, and then the main thing about when you have an on-click listener is you have to say what you're going to do when you click. So it's telling you the override means that I must have an on-click. If I have a button that has a click listener, then I must say what I want to do when it clicks. That makes sense. And so the argument here, this on-click has an argument, which is the button. So so there are games you could play to have one method handle multiple buttons, and then you would like to know which button was pressed. We're doing each one separately. We're having a listener for each button. So, but just to make sure that we understand why this argument is here, that's why I am going to change the color of the buttons and make them that they can't be clicked, just to do something with this view. So this view may be if your function's handling multiple things to determine which thing was of the many, or if it is indeed just, as in this case, one thing, always just the one thing, the one button, but it gives me the opportunity to change things about that view, about that visible widget, that button. Okay, so V here, V is just the name, it gave it automatically. I could change it if I want to, but I just leave it as its default name V, and it is a view. And then there is this question mark, sort of question mark is sort of like, what if there weren't a view? What if I somehow came to this function, came to this click by some other means, by some code means, rather than by clicking a button? So it's possible that I might not have a view if I've somehow called this in another way. I'm not going to, but that's the sort of purpose of the question mark. Okay, what do I want to do when they click the button? When they click on English, I want to find the name. Let me make this big again. I want to find the name, Ginge, and then add the word hello to it and make that message and display the message. So I want to get the variable username. I'm getting it from the edit text. I'm getting the text from the edit text. And the text could be more complicated. It may have a font. It may have a font size, a font color. But what we're saying here, of all the things in the text that we just want it to be the simple string of the text. So convert whatever text is, convert it to a string, make it the edit text. I'm going to have this hello username. So I'm inserting the username variable. That's what the $sign does, say that username is not text within the quote, but it is a variable to be substituted into the string. And I'm going to set that text to I'm going to set that string once I make it. I'm going to make that the text of TD English, the message next, the text view next to the English button. I'm going to change the V, which is the button. If there was indeed a button that was pressed to get me here, then I'm going to set its background color to magenta. And one way to work with the color class is just to say color and then dot, and there are some predefined colors like magenta. And then can I click on the button again, or am I effectively disabling the button? I am disabling the button by setting its is clickable property to false. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for French and German and Spanish. I'm just going to write the functions in slightly different ways. So this is a more implicit version. So this was the most explicit version, where you explicitly write out on click. You explicitly say that you're overriding the on click function. Down here, there has to be an on click function. You have to override it. And so you can skip some of those words. You don't need to say, I'm writing the function. I don't need to say I'm writing a function. I don't need to say override. I don't need to say function. I don't even need to give the function a name. I'm just going to define it straight up right here. So it's sort of like this idea of like an anonymous function. It's just right here, I'm naming the function. So there is an argument and then the function. And so that's this idea here of this arrow. So V is the name of the argument, which was the view as we saw above. And that's the argument. And then here's what we want to do in this function. Get the username from the edit text. Once again, make the text for French. So that's bonjour. And then the username. We're setting the color of the button. I'm using a different color method here. So up here, I used sort of a color constant, color.magenta. Down here, I'm using a color method, color.RGB, and I'm giving it an amount of red, amount of green, amount of blue. And so I've used the RGB method. And then once again, I made the button so that we couldn't click it again. German, even more sort of implicit the version. So here we made there is still, in French, there is still some sort of explicit separation between the argument and the statements. Here we don't have that. We're not naming the argument, and we're not separating it with an arrow to the statements. We're just going sort of straight into the statements. It's understood that we need an on click, that we need to override it, that it has an argument that is a view. They've named it for me. You can see here in gray, this is not something I typed, but it has implicitly named it, it. So it's sort of like a this, but it's, not quite the same. But so they named this argument of this method it. And then I do the same username. I get the username from the edit text. I'm writing the German text with hello. And then I'm setting the button, the argument here, more of an implied name was it. And I'm using it to change the color. And I'm using the ARGB method this time. So the A is the alpha. This is sort of a measure of its transparency. So 0, you would pretty much see through the button and wouldn't see it at all. 255 would be sort of like a solid, and it would be the sort of pretty much identical to this. But with the ARGB, you're giving it a color, but if there was something behind, you would sort of see the something behind. And again, make it false. And then I did the same with Spanish that I did with German, almost completely the same, except I'm using yet another. So in terms of the set on click listener and the on click and all that, it's the same. Spanish is the same as German, but I used one more method of the color class, the parse color. And so in parse color, we are handing it a hex code. So instead of numbers for red, green, and blue, we're using hex code, and we string them together and begin it with #, hashtag, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So then the other thing I want to talk about here is I've clicked some of the buttons, I've displayed some of the message, and then if I start to change the text, somehow managed to kill my program. I enter something, Fred, and enter it, and then if I start to come back up here and change Fred, it's clearing out the message. So that's the next part we want to show. So this is an event of the edit text, so ET name. We're doing the add text change listener. This has 3 methods that you must have. So on click was easy, and then because the buttons just had the on click, that's what you had to override, and so you could do these more implicit versions because there was only one thing you had to do. The text change, they're sort of, it's asking you to do 3 things: a before, an after, and a during. And I'm not going to do anything after, but I have to have it. I'm not going to do anything before, but I have to have it. And then I'm going to do all my work in the during. So that was the on text change. And the arguments, it has several arguments, a character sequence, a start, blah, blah, blah. It has all these things. And I'm not going to really care about those things. What I want to do when my user does any changing of what's in the box, I want to clear out my messages. I want to set my colors back to a default gray, and I want to make the buttons clickable again so that we can play this game some more. So here are my text views. I'm using the set text method to set it all back to dashes, so clearing out any previous response. Here I'm setting the color back, and I'm using a built-in constant of light gray. And I'm taking my buttons and using the isClickable method to set that back to true so that they can be clicked again. And then here I am at the end of my program. So that's what I wanted to show. Just some basic functionality: text views, edit text, buttons. The main method of a button was the on click. There are some very explicit or implicit ways of writing those functions. And then for the edit text, the sort of main sort of event that you might want to write some code for is the add text change listener. You need to listen for an event and then respond to it with some code. It wants you to distinguish 3 variations: when you start to type, when you're done typing, as you're typing. It wants you to have all of them. So I have all of them, or it will yell at me, but I've decided that I really only want to have any actions of that I'm coding in the on text change. So that's it for this one. Thanks for your attention.